Sleepaway Camp 3? Not today. Hello and welcome to a Rotted Review of the Day, and today is ordinarily Franchise Friday, and I ordinarily would be picking back up where I left off with the Sleepaway Camp series. However, I watched a movie that I think deserves a special wedge in the weekly calendar as opposed to trying to find a day that this one would fit into. The review I'm going to be doing today is for Real Cases of Shadow People, the Sarah McCormick story. I watched this one yesterday in preparation of possibly doing like a Monday or Tuesday release, and ultimately I just need to talk about this one right away, mostly as a public service announcement to help the community of horror fans out there avoid this one, which it absolutely should be avoided. This follows Sarah McCormick and two other student filmmakers that are going out and trying to do a documentary about shadow people. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the concept of shadow people, it's a fairly common supernatural, paranormal, what have you event that, people wake up. I mean, some people say it's sleep paralysis. One thing that I noticed is watching like Dead Files and so forth. If you watch a lot of early episodes, a lot of people will describe, dark figures of kind of an unknown, origin and, mass and just kind of fuzzy and so forth. And Amy Adams would describe them as well. Those are shadow people. And now you watch an episode and everybody says, well, I saw a shadow person. So, I mean, is it art defining reality, or are people actually seeing it? Who knows? But the notion is that these shadow people exist. They are supernatural, paranormal entities that are typically malicious in nature. And this movie is the documentary attempt at capturing them, or at the very least, that's the core of the plot line of this movie, is the students are trying to make this documentary, and they're traveling seemingly all over the U.S., primarily in the southeast territories, just kind of traveling along, finding people that have experienced missing family members and or just experiences with shadow people in general. Now, here's the real problem with this movie, is them on the road and them interacting with one another with benign, outside the relevancy of the storyline conversation is the absolute bulk of the movie. This movie is an hour and 45 minutes long, and it could have been trimmed down to a 20-minute short. Without sacrificing anything. This was a very, very simple concept, and it was a very simple execution of that concept. Like I said, this was them traveling around. Ultimately, now we're in Louisiana. Now we can interview this person, and then they do, and it lasts for all of 4 minutes, and then they travel around and talk with each other about absolutely nothing of relevance or interest. Sexual exploits, fart jokes, anything and everything under the sun except for the material at hand, until they get to the next person and interview them for 2 minutes. I actually took the time to watch through this, and up until the point of about 1 hour and 17 minutes in, and that is when the last interview happens that actually segues into the plot points where the film actually gets rolling and finishes off. But up until that point, 1 hour and 17, the entirety of the plot of the Shadow People story, i.e. the interviews that took place, took up a grand total of 10 minutes and 45 seconds of this film. The entire rest of this, hour and 7 minute long, whatever, was nothing. It was driving and talking about Slurpees and farts and who knows what else. 10 minutes and 45 seconds up until 1 hour and 17, there was actual content. And then it started to proceed with the rest of the movie until it finished up into kind of a ending. So this was absolutely worth avoiding. I mean, it was just absolutely boring. I saw that this had a fairly high review on some Metacritic scores, and I thought maybe, well, this is of interest. And it seems like ultimately it was just kind of a padding of 10s on IMDb and so forth that were insider trading, if you will. It's not legitimate. It couldn't be legitimate that many people found this to be of the ilk of Seven Samurai and The Godfather 2. It's just not. It's not even close. I'll go ahead and throw up my own scores here all at once here. You'll see that the plot got a 2 out of 25. Ultimately, what plot? Even when it did get down to the content, it was pretty simple and formulaic and not at all surprising or interesting. The intent, I gave an absolute 0. Any elements of intrigue, interest, or scares, it's hard-pressed to land with an audience that you've worked so hard to put to sleep beforehand, and you can't expect Act 3 to save a movie when Acts 1 and 2 are a glass of warm milk and a comfy blankie. It's just not going to work out. The acting, I gave a 2 out of 25. How much of this was a total free-for-all, and how much of this was kind of guided improv? This is kind of ultimately the point we need to get to. You already know how to talk to each other, so go. I really don't know, and I could honestly, I care even less. They did perform their roles. They did ultimately wind up taking their characters to the ultimate conclusions that they did, and for that, I give it 2 participation points, and that's pretty much all they are. The technical, I gave a 3 out of 25. This was mostly just participation points as well. It wasn't so bad that I'm giving it complete zeros, but I mean, technically they did film that last third act, and they did execute some imagery on there, and by the time the end credits rolled, they had told a coherent story, even though it could have been condensed down without sacrificing a single thing. I would have honestly given the technical a 4 or a 5 out of 25, except one thing that was a bit annoying to me was the soundtrack. The music that kept playing throughout there was a very recognizable, just constant Apple GarageBand loop that, I don't know. I mean, that really sums up how I feel about the movie, is it's lazy. I mean, we need a soundtrack. Okay, we'll kick on the software application and we'll just drag out this loop here for 3 minutes, and then, we'll interject that throughout the course of the movie. And it's just lazy overall, and it really absolutely should be avoided. If you are like me and you see this come across your path and you look at the IMDb scores and you see that many 10s, don't be fooled. Look up a rotted review and avoid this one, because it is absolutely worth running away from. Do not waste your time. Do not waste your money on a rental. Just walk away from Real Cases of the Shadow People, the Sarah McCormick story. That is my review. Thank you very much for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.